Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the world of Coco and Daltz. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Daltz.
And so, in this episode of the podcast, the fabulous podcast that has been getting rave reviews across the internet.
From our single, drunken Swedish listener.
Also from friends and family, people that are completely objective.
Unbiased.
Yes. They know exactly what entertainment is, and they've been listening and requesting certain things, and it's all good. So anyway, let's talk about David Letterman's new show. David Letterman came back, had a show that debuted Friday on Netflix.
Which we subscribe to, which you would know if you listened to episode either 1 or 2 of the podcast. I can't remember when we talked about it. Yes.
And so on this show, Mr. Letterman had...
Mr. Letterman. He had former President Barack Obama.
As a guest, his first guest of the first show.
His first and only guest of the show. Yeah.
Apparently he's having George Clooney on. He's also having somebody else famous.
You mean he's not bringing his mom on? Or actually, I think his mom died. So,
yeah. Not having somebody like me on, for example, who's not famous.
No, you're internet famous.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We talked about that.
Among our single Swedish drunken listeners.
Our scads of Swedish listeners. Well, is that like a gaggle of geese, a scad of Swedes? So, what do we think of the new show by David Letterman?
I mean, I enjoyed it. I always liked Letterman. It's different than a typical late-night talk show in that there's no Paul Schaefer, there's no stupid pet tricks, There's no real monologue. He just kind of came out onto the stage and was like, wow, it's good to be back. All right, my first guest. Like, he didn't really...
There was no shtick to it.
It
was not very shticky.
Right. It was just him and his guest talking, which was kind of how it had been promoted. Like, I didn't read a lot of advance materials on it, but they said he didn't want to do any of that stuff anymore. He just wanted to talk to people more in depth than you're used to in a 5 or 6 minute typical late night talk show interview. So.
And I think they hit that. And the formal title of the show is called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction. It's on a stage. It's just 2 chairs facing each other. There's no elaborate set. There's no, like Coco said, there's no band or anything like that. It's just 2 people talking. It's very HBO-y to me.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
You know what I'm saying? Like very stark and just the people talking kind of thing. And it was a good thing. It was good. And Letterman seemed to be very prepared for the subject. I mean, it's Barack Obama, so it's not like you got to do a lot of in-depth research. Like, who is this guy?
Totally.
But at the same time, he did a lot of stuff about about his kids, and he tried to relate to them. And apparently, they're pals. They know each other from over the years. I guess as pally as you can be with David Letterman.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about Letterman too. Is like he clearly likes and is friends with his interview subject, but you're still gonna get an interview out of it. It's not just gonna be the 2 of them like punching each other in the shoulder and, I love you.
Yucking it up and say, remember that time we went and had drinks at the so-and-so?
Right.
Nobody knows what that means.
Exactly. It was,
It wasn't a bro show.
Right. It wasn't a hard-hitting interview, but it was...
But it was enlightening and entertaining, I thought.
Right. More than you would get in a 6-minute interview on a late-night TV talk show.
And it wasn't... like you said, it wasn't hard hitting. It wasn't like the old Letterman, going at Madonna or anything like that. Like it was just good and conversational. It was very conversational. You felt like you got something out of it. I think, anyway.
Right. I did enjoy the photo of Obama dancing with his dad moves on stage next to Prince. He said that was 3 or 4 months before Prince died. That was good stuff. That came at the end of the episode. So. We made it all the way through. The thing that I was not anticipating was so what I had read beforehand said it was just going to be like an hour of Letterman and whoever his guest is on stage talking. But for this specific episode, and I don't know if this is going to carry on into episodes in the future, he did taped segments outside of the studio with Representative John Lewis, who marched in Selma back in the 60s and who's now in Congress, civil rights hero. And I didn't know there were going to be segments like that. So that was, and there wasn't like an intro to that. It just kind of
It went right into it.
Right, it stopped. He talked to Obama for like 15 minutes or so, and then there was a break in the conversation, and then you went right into this tape thing. It wasn't, oh yeah, and by the way, hey, I talked to John Lewis, and we went to Selma. And so I'm not sure if that's going to be a thing he does in every episode. Like, who's he going to get to talk about any stuff for Clooney, right?
Well, and on the page, on one of the pages I'm looking at right now, it doesn't say anything. It lists the on-location segment from the first episode called "It's a Whole New Ball Game Now." That was the title. The second show title is George Clooney, and there's no listing of an on-location segment for it right now. That doesn't mean it's not going to change, but that's the way it's listed right now.
Right. So, and I understand why they went into civil rights stuff with the first black president of the United States as your guest. Like, I totally understand that. But I was just very surprised because I wasn't anticipating it. So, like I said, and I don't know what they would be able to do for Clooney like that, or if it's just a special one-time thing because of who the guest was. So. Yeah.
And even though the show just debuted recently, looking on the Rotten Tomatoes rating system, it got a 74% approval rating on an average of 6.5 out of 10 based on 19 reviews. So not very many reviews, but it was well received in the beginning and is critically acclaimed as well early on. So we'll see if he maintains that kind of momentum.
Yeah, I didn't read any of the reviews, but I looked at the headlines, and out of maybe...
You are a typical surfer of the day.
I know, totally. And out of maybe the 7 or 8 reviews I saw, only one of them said it was a disappointment. All the rest of them, even if they didn't say, this is the best thing in the world, they at least said, oh, it was an enjoyable hour, and we're glad Letterman is back, because he has... his voice has been missed for the 2 years since he's been retired, or however long it's been. Yeah. So
it was good to have him back. I hope he doesn't. I hope he continues what he did in that first episode. It was very collegial between him and Barack Obama, and they were joking it up. And Obama was giving it just as much as Letterman was giving it. I like the back and forth that they had.
Totally.
And they were giving each other shots, and I think that helps the expectation that people are thinking that Letterman's going to be funny. And I hope they don't try to pull off this is a really serious topic kind of thing. That's, to me, the John Lewis thing didn't really strike me as informative or as good as the main part of the show, because it felt stilted to me. It felt a little bit like Letterman was trying to be a serious journalist, interviewer of John Lewis in this a very important moment, a very important moment in time, all that sort of thing. It didn't quite work for me, but it was the first attempt at this kind of thing, and maybe it was just too jarring for me to see Letterman be a serious guy talking about a serious matter. Right.
Maybe... I mean, it's a learning curve for him, too, because has he ever really done anything like that before? So maybe...
Well, if you go back to our first show so long ago and see how much we've changed and developed since then.
Right, that's true. We have honed our craft.
Look how good we are now.
Totes.
So the show is called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman. And we're looking at, so I said George Clooney is in the next one.
Yes.
Malala is going to be the guest after that. Jay-Z, Tina Fey, and Howard Stern. Those are the scheduled guests for the next episodes of the show.
I think we're going to be watching all of those.
Yeah, I think so too. They all look very informative and very interesting. It'll be interesting to see. So obviously Malala in that mix there is probably the most serious looking, yes, absolutely, the most serious person, topic, and subject matter. So it'll be interesting to see what Letterman does there.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we're not going to watch the Howard Stern episode on the Friday it drops if your kids are here. just call it a hunch.
No, I don't. There's not going to be a lot of Netflix watching when the girls are here.
That isn't of the Space Puppies variety. Or Space Buddies, that was the name of it. There we go.
Poppies. So that's good. So let's transition to something a little bit more serious. Speaking of Malala and serious, but we're going down the Hollywood road here now, and we want to talk about Marky Mark, my friend Marky Mark.
You're hanging out in Boston with Marky Mark.
We were hanging out with in
your
Boston.
bros.
Yeah, me and my pal.
So there was a whole brouhaha this week. For those who don't know, I'll recap it briefly for you. There's a movie out right now called All the Money in the World. I don't know how accurate it is about the events depicted, but it tells the true story of billionaire J. Paul Getty's grandson, who was kidnapped and held for ransom in the early 70s, I believe. It starred Kevin Spacey as J. Paul Getty. In October-ish, all the accusations came out about Spacey being a horrible sexual predator for decades, and Ridley Scott, who's the director of All the Money in the World, decided to edit Spacey completely out of the movie and recast the role with Christopher Plummer, who's a legend, which I know we're not supposed to say that word about somebody if they're alive, but who is a legend, who's been in the business for 50, 60 years. He's won an Oscar, well-regarded, fantastic actor. Ridley Scott came out in November and said the entire cast and crew agreed to the reshoots because they had to reshoot all the scenes that Kevin Spacey was in. They couldn't just digitally insert Christopher Plummer in these already shot scenes.
Do we know why?
I don't know. I don't know if it would have been more expensive to do that. Yeah, I'm not sure. If it was just cheaper to hire a real actor.
So they couldn't put CGI his face onto Kevin Spacey?
Right. I mean, if they could do that in the Star Wars movies with... right. Yeah, why not?
They did that with Carrie Fisher, right? As we saw.
Yeah, but they decided to recast the role completely. The entire cast and crew went over to London for about a week at the end of November with the December 22nd film release date bearing down upon them. They had to get it ready.
Lock solid.
Yeah.
Can't get out of that.
Exactly. So Ridley Scott says at the beginning of November, when this all gets set, everybody's doing it for basically union scale, which is next to nothing because we believe in this project. We want to get it done. As it turns out, that's not true. Mark Wahlberg, it was reported earlier this week.
Also known as Marky Mark.
Marky Mark, which I am going to refer to him as Marky Mark from now on.
Oh, okay. You can.
Yeah. I just want to...
That's how I like to refer to him.
I want to be the journalist and at least get his first and last name in there on first reference.
All right.
So,
you be the pro.
All right. I mean, we saw the post yesterday. Come on.
Yeah.
So.
You're inspired.
Right. Katharine Graham inspired me. So
you were one of the women on the stairs when she was walking down. Yeah. So, anyway, sorry.
So, as it turns out, Marky Mark actually negotiated a $1.5 million fee to do all those reshoots when everybody else was getting $80 a day.
So he's saying, if you want me back, this is the cost.
Right. There are conflicting reports about that. The first report that came out said he did not, in his original contract, have it written that he had to do reshoots, so he just negotiated a fee to do the reshoots. Like a day later, USA Today found a source who said, actually, he did have reshoots in his contract. And what really happened is he also had co-star approval in his contract. And he had them over a barrel because he wouldn't approve Christopher Plummer's casting unless they gave him $1.5 million. Allegedly, because he's also allegedly upset that he did the original production for less money than he would normally get for a regular film like Planet of the Apes or whatever. So
just as an example.
Which is more along the lines of the typical Marky Mark oeuvre than...
Oeuvre!
Yeah. We're back to oeuvre.
We're back with the oeuvre.
Then All the Money in the World. So there was a total uproar about this because Michelle Williams, multiple Oscar-nominated actress who's his co-star, got $1,000 for a week of work, and Marky Mark gets $1.5 million. So after a few days of deafening silence, a statement, which I'm going to go out on another limb and say was not written by Marky Mark himself.
What? You don't think he writes his own statements?
It was probably written by the crisis management team at his agency. Said, over the last few days, my reshoot fee for All the Money in the World has become an important topic of conversation. I 100% support the fight for fair pay, and I'm donating the $1.5 million to the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund in Michelle Williams' name. I'm going to go out on another limb and say Marky Mark does not give a rat's patootie about pay inequality. I mean, if this guy was going to hold the production hostage to get paid,
1.5,
then, I mean, he was going to tank this movie. Nobody was going to go see a movie with a known alleged sexual predator in a key role. He was just going to let this movie tank. Allegedly.
He had all the leverage, and he knew he did.
Yeah. And I understand the arguments that, well, that's business, and you have to look out for number one, but...
Not in this situation.
Right. Like, this is definitely...
It's Hollywood, though. I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time in Hollywood. I'm
right.
sure.
Exactly. And I don't know what he and Michelle Williams both got paid for the original production of the movie, but dollars to donuts, he got paid way freaking more than she did for the original production, and now he's got 1.5 million more. Although he did donate it, but I'm not gonna praise him for donating money he never should have gotten in the first place. I'm not
and
gonna do
also seemed like it was against his wishes. Not against his wishes, maybe, but it was something that he didn't volunteer right away. There was clearly some closed door meetings going on. What do we need to do to save this situation?
Right. There were days of deafening silence from him.
Right.
Like, no Twitter statement.
He wasn't
saying,
tweeting out something.
Right. Like, I had no idea she didn't negotiate this as well. Like, I assumed everybody did it, because this was so sudden and was such a disruption to our lives to go to London to do these reshoots. So, yeah, And TMZ, so Ridley Scott did make that statement in November, nobody negotiated. I mean, he's Ridley Scott. Does he really know that Marky Mark negotiated this? Like, I would wonder about that. But TMZ did report that what Ridley Scott was told...
Or TMZ, as they call it in Canada.
Yeah. We are an international podcast.
We're bilingual here. I'm trying to translate for my people.
After oof, is that the French word for egg? Is that what we realized yesterday?
Yeah, don't remind me about that. That was wrong.
When one of us had been drinking yesterday, but that's neither here nor there. So...
Called out on a different podcast. 2 in a row.
And now I don't remember what I was saying.
Oh,
so now we got sidetracked.
Sorry.
Oh, TMZ. There we go.
TMZ.
So TMZ reports that Ridley Scott actually was not aware that Marky Mark didn't get paid, and now he's embarrassed because he looks like a jerk because he was like, no, everybody did it for free. And in fact, it turns out the mediocre white guy is the one who got paid, and everybody else, yeah.
So here, the bottom line for this story, the crux, the conclusion that we make, the lesson we learn is that nothing is as it seems in Hollywood. This is a newsflash, I know.
Right. Like smoke and mirrors? What? What?
Some deception?
So what do you think about this? Do you think he was well within his rights to negotiate, or do you think he should have done it in good faith for union scale like everybody else?
I think absent this terribleness with Kevin Spacey, I think he was perfectly within his rights to renegotiate or negotiate. But because this was like a unprecedented,
extraordinary circumstances,
and it was a nasty situation that they were trying to salvage all these people's work. Not just the actors are on the screens. Like when you look, as we go to many movies, and you sit there through the credits, and you see all these people who were involved with a movie, any movie, and so to just completely sewer or sabotage the work of all these people for ego or whatever it happens to be that's a little dodgy to me. So I think if it hadn't been if something had been like, oh, we really didn't like his performance, and if it had been not Kevin Spacey but somebody else, we didn't like his performance, we're going to bring in Christopher Plummer and we're going to do this. I think that's a little bit different. If you're still going to try to meet a deadline for the end of December, and people are having to come over Thanksgiving and reshoot and all the things that happen. Right.
Everybody's giving up their Thanksgiving holiday to go to London to reshoot this. You're not the only one whose life is being disrupted.
Other than the people that are in England, because they probably don't celebrate American Thanksgiving.
No, unless they're expats.
Right.
And I even understand if they would have opened the vault for Christopher Plummer, because...
Last minute.
Right. It's so last minute. You've got zero time to prep for this. Right. Like, this is very, very hasty. This is an accelerated schedule. And you're Christopher Plummer.
Right.
You are a legend. Like, I'm not saying throw $100 million at the guy, but I understand if they're like, please help us salvage this. What do you want? Like, we'll give you anything you want. Like, I get that, but Marky Mark is not Christopher Plummer.
Right. Well, and
you're an underwear model, Marky Mark. You have a career because your brother was in a boy band in the 80s.
And he plays the same role in every movie.
He squints and looks like he smelled a fart. Like that's his emotive quality right there.
Daddy's Home?
Yeah.
That to me is that's the Marky Mark that is in every movie to me. It's just like this intimidating leather jacket tough guy, and he's good at it. Obviously he's good at doing that role.
Right.
But it's the same kind of role in every movie. Like that's what he's doing in this movie too, right? He's essentially not a bodyguard, but he's sort of like a fixer, and he's helping track down the son and everything like that.
Yeah, that's what the role sounds like. Like, we haven't seen the movie yet. It hasn't come to our area yet. But...
Yeah. And so I think that you touched on what I think is the underappreciated part of this is Christopher Plummer. I mean, he sort of gets lost in the shuffle on this because he came in with, as you said, no preparation time. Some of these actors need months to prepare for a role.
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis spent, 2 years reading every biography he could on Abe Lincoln for that?
Right.
I mean...
And you could see it on the screen.
He was phenomenal.
He was fantastic. Yeah. But something like Christopher Plummer, he's just such a pro, right? And he's 88 years old, isn't he?
Right.
So he's stepping into this role, and he's like, yeah, no problem. Really, I could do that.
And he knows the gravity of the situation. Like, he understands why he's being cast in this role. It was like a worldwide headline, storm when everything happened with Kevin Spacey, and people knew. Like, he knows everything is riding on him now.
There's a lot of pressure on him. He came in, stepped up. Like, we'll see the results on the screen, and the reviews have been... not as positive as I thought they would be, considering the storyline and considering the actors involved and considering the director. It hasn't been they haven't been fantastic, but they're still pretty good. I mean, it's still getting pretty good ratings. So
I have read good things about Christopher Plummer's performance.
So there it is. I mean, that's it in a nutshell to me. It's like, here's a guy who steps in.
He's a pro.
Doesn't complain. I mean, who knows what he got paid? Like you said, maybe he got paid a lot, and we're not hearing that. But he's Christopher Plummer.
Right.
He's 88 years old.
Right.
Like, give him what he wants, and he's stepping right into this unprecedented situation.
Exactly.
And I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see this movie. I'm interested to see this movie. I don't know if we'll go see it in the theater
or wait for Netflix.
Wait for it to show up on a streaming service near us. But it appears to be pretty top notch, and I like the story. It sounds like a really interesting story. So that's always it for me.
Who knows how closely it hews to actual events, though? How much poetic, license they took with the actual storyline. But it does look interesting. I'd definitely watch it.
So it's the story of the kidnapping of 16-year-old John Paul Getty III and the desperate attempt by his devoted mother to convince his billionaire grandfather, Jean Paul Getty, to pay the ransom. And, of course, Michelle Williams is the mother. Christopher Plummer is John Paul Getty. And Mark Wahlberg is the fixer guy.
Michelle Williams, who would have thought that Jen from Dawson's Creek would be nominated for 4 or 5 Oscars at this point in her acting career?
What a spectacular career she's had. We were looking at that earlier, thanks to the notes provided by our crack research team. She's also in The Greatest Showman, which is on right now, and is I noticed the soundtrack of which is number 2 or the second week in a row at number 1 on Billboard charts.
Speaking of music, we're going to do an all music episode soon.
Yes, we are.
Stay tuned for that, listeners.
Look at that, slipping that in.
Yeah.
She is also starring in, which is in pre-production right now. She is Janis Joplin.
Whoa!
In a movie called Janice, which is probably about Janis Joplin. I'm thinking there's not 2 Janices in that movie.
Not Janice the Muppet?
Oh, maybe it is Janice.Maybe it's an inspirational thing that Janis Joplin inspired Janice the Muppet.
Maybe, you never know.
Oh, I should. Maybe I'll click on that after. She was in Manchester by the Sea, got nominated for that.
Which she was very good in. I was very impressed with her in that.
My Week with Marilyn, we're just hitting the highlights here. Blue Valentine, Deception, I'm Not There was a very interesting movie, and Brokeback Mountain, among others. And Dawson's Creek, of course.
And so she's got 4, I believe we said, Oscar nominations.
That's right, yep.
To Marky Mark's 1 for acting, which was from The Departed, which was a fantastic movie, but I'm going to go out on yet another limb and say that nomination has more to do with Martin Scorsese's directing ability than it does Marky Mark's acting talent.
He was also nominated for The Fighter.
But he was like a producer on that, right?
Yes.
Like not...
Correct. Yeah. Not as an acting role. So, yeah, I'm with you. Michelle Williams, spectacular. And she apparently gave up all sorts of time with her family over the Thanksgiving weekend. She had to get alternative... I mean, she's a star, so she probably had 14 people to come and look after her kids, but she still had to make time and get away from them during a holiday.
Right. Like we said, everybody's lives were disrupted for this reshoot. So, and everybody did it for $80 a day, or whatever their particular union scale was, for the lighting people and et cetera, et cetera.
Per diem.
Yeah. So
the most startling thing to me about all this was that they got $80 a day or somethlike like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that right?
That's the figure that I've been reading.
So Michelle Williams is like, here's your $80.
Right. Like, dude, that's what I make at my job if I work 8 hours, and I'm not an Oscar-nominated actress. Although I should be.
So she's probably not walking on the set and they hand her
Right.
4 20s
Right.
in an envelope.
An envelope full of cash.
Yeah.
Like,
Here you go. Go ahead and act.
they would probably make her wait till the end of the day. She has to like sign for it,
Right.
like on the form, and then
you got
they
to
hand
earn
her
it.
cash. Right.
You got to earn that per diem because you never know. She might take the money and just dodge, right?
Yeah. Like
Just bail. Go to Starbucks. And,
Later, suckers. I'm gonna.
thanks for the cash.
Right. So, speaking of lightening things up a little bit.
Speaking of replacements,
Right.
so as people might have heard, we had Mr. Alex Trebek, who is from Sudbury, Ontario, which is not anywhere close to where I'm from in Ontario. So, as people probably know, he had brain surgery to recover from what was called a subdural hematoma. He hit his head, had some blood clots after a fall in October, and so we were thinking he looks like he's going to be fine. They're missing some time with filming and that sort of thing. They've got. We're talking, of course, about the host of Jeopardy,
Or as we call it, because we're idiots,
Geopardy. And so the Geopardy is going to continue because they have many, many episodes in the can, apparently, that were filmed before Alex had to do this. So this got us thinking, which is always a dangerous prospect. What would happen if Alex Trebek went off the show and couldn't do it anymore? And we're hoping he's not, hoping he's fine. He's signed through 2020, so he's back and better than ever. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that he needs a replacement for a fill-in or something like that. Who would replace Alex Trebek?
I would love to see Will Ferrell
Yes.
as like frustrated
Yes.
Alex Trebek
Yes.
from the SNL glory days as the villain. That would be amazing.
So I would love to see Sean Connery fill in. But the Saturday Night Live Sean Connery, not the real Sean Connery.
Like Daryl Hammond, is it, as Sean Connery?
What is a book on the shelf? Trebek! See, it would be great. It would just be great. Anybody else you think would be really good as a replacement? I like the Will Ferrell idea.
Yeah, that's pretty much my only...
That's your only one?
That's my only one.
What about Marky Mark?
Oh my God. How much money would he demand to do that? Like,
Can you imagine him? I'm out of here. Screw this. Like,
totally. Like, he'd squint and he wouldn't be able to pronounce anything. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he would be like the Sean Connery on SNL saying
mispronouncing
anal bum cover instead of an album cover, only not because he's...
Okay, so what about one of your favorite guys, Pat Sajak? How would he do on Geopardy?
Like I've referenced many times before, I'm old, so I watch The Wheel.
Not as old as I am.
Well, yeah.
Well, you didn't dispute that at all.
Well, I mean, you are chronologically older than I am. That is a fact.
Yeah, you're right.
So I watch The Wheel partly because it reminds me of my grandma. My grandma loved The Wheel because grandmas love The Wheel. So I watch it every night. I subject adults to it after Geopardy. And I think Pat would do a good job because Pat's a pro. Like, Pat, whatever Pat gets paid, he deserves it because he just makes it look
Well, he makes
effortless.
it look really easy. Yeah, he does.
He makes it look like we were talking about with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep.
Right. When you're good at something.
Right. When you're good at something, you make it look like you're not even trying.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've seen people who maybe had some learning disabilities be on the wheel and situations that could potentially be very uncomfortable. Pat just breezes right through them, and I'm like, that's why he gets paid more than union scale.
Yeah. Well, what about Vanna? Do you think Vanna could do it? She could touch the panels on. They could do like a team up thing.
Yeah, they could tag team.
They could just take their game from the Wheel of Fortune and apply it to Geopardy.
Right, because she's not actually turning letters on the wheel anymore. It's all computer screens.
Right.
So
you could do the same thing, although she'd have to have a ladder.
Yeah.
Because of the higher ones.
Maybe she could be on like a Segway and she could just like, like scoot across the stage.
What a great idea. I would pay to see that. I would pay to see that. So when Alex Trebek's contract was coming up, not this last time, but the previous time, People Magazine suggested some possible replacements. This was 2014, so it's a little bit old, but it's still fun to look at. I will list them to you.
Okay.
Tom Selleck, Ryan Seacrest.
No. For the love of God,
this is all previous to current events, because the number 3 suggestion.
Oh God,
James Franco. So we're not going there.
No.
Will Ferrell was the number 4 suggestion.
All right, yeah.
Trebek. John O'Hurley.
Oh, okay.
That wouldn't be bad. Chelsea Handler.
Ooh, yeah, I don't know.
That seems a little out in left field. I mean, but there needs to be.
That was their diversity.
I was going to say, it needs to be a woman in there, and then there's Mayim Bialik from.
Oh, Blossom.
From
and The Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory. That's
she does have, I think, a PhD.
She's a smart lady.
Yeah, some kind of crazy astrophysics-like field or something,
right?
Like quantum mechanics.
The only one in Hollywood. Yeah. Number 8 suggestion: LeVar Burton.
Reading Rainbow. Yes, I love it.
Right. Billy Eichner. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Sorry, Billy.
As long as it's not Billy Bush.
Oh. Guess who the number 10 suggestion is?
Who's that?
Who could it be with a reaction like that to somebody that you will know?
I don't know.
Idris Elba. He'd be good, wouldn't he?
He would be good.
But he would be... Have you seen the... I think he's in one of the Disney... One of the animated movies. I'm trying to think of the name of it. And he's the big police chief, police chief, and he's yelling at everybody. So he would be good in that role. He'd be like, that's not the right answer. And he'd be pounding the... I'd like to see him in that role on Jeopardy.
I haven't seen that movie, so that's...
I'm going to look it up. Ken Jennings.
Oh, okay.
74 show winner. So that's...
Yeah, he'd be good. That would be a natural... Because he's like from Utah or something, right? He's probably not got anything going on, so they could just...
Because people in Utah are boring?
I don't know. I don't know what he does. Like, he probably made enough to retire, like, on his Jeopardy earnings.
There go our 3 Utah listeners.
Are there drunken Swedes in Utah? I don't know.
Maybe. There should be.
Yeah, so that's...
Okay, so let's segue. Speaking of segue, when you were segueing Vanna around the Jeopardy set,
okay,
let's segue to our segment on Versus.
Do the theme for Versus.
Oh, I forgot. It's kind of like the theme from Great White North, actually. See, I can't do. I didn't do all of it because I think we might have had to pay rights for that. But
I think you're allowed 8 to 15 seconds
before
you have to. Don't look it up.
See, you're way smarter than I am. Okay, so Pat Summerall.
Oh, whoa. We have not been drinking today, just FYI.
Okay. If you made it this far, I apologize. Pat Sajak versus Alex Trebek.
I'm taking Pat every time.
Why?
Because Pat's not a pretentious D-bag.
What makes you think that Alex Trebek, a good, solid citizen from Sudbury, Ontario, the Nickel City, why do you think he's not a nice man?
Well, I didn't say he's not a nice man. He wouldn't know the answers to all that stuff if he didn't have it right in front of him, which is exactly what Daryl Hammond as Sean Connery said in one of those like classic SNL sketches.
Oh, you know who'd be a good replacement? I just thought of this.
Who?
Norm Macdonald as Burt Reynolds.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing. That would be so awesome. Yeah. What do you want? Yeah, that'd be awesome.
When he shows up with his own podium. Anyway.
What about you?
I like Alex Trebek. Mm-hmm. But the whole French accent thing he did that one episode where he was reading the question with a French accent, it just put me off. I thought to myself, you're better than that, Alex. You're better than that. It was because there was one French word in the question.
Yeah.
And therefore he went with the whole thing. It's sort of like when you're in a foreign country and people don't speak English. And so you speak louder in English, thinking that they're going to understand what you're saying. It's like, they're not deaf. They speak another language entirely. So that had that moment. So that pushed him off the shelf for me. So I'm more in the Pat Sajak category. And I like the witty banter that he has sometimes with the guests. And you can tell he's been doing it for 77 years. Because he's just like mailing it in. He's like, okay, you can pick that wild card up and flash it around if you want.
Yeah, I mean, he and Vanna have, and Alex Trebek as well, they have amazing job security.
Yes.
I mean, they've been doing this for 35 years, so...
And they are signed through 2020 as well. They all 3 of them signed, at the same time their contract renewals.
And we're gonna keep watching. I'm sorry to tell you.
We're going to keep watching. And we hope you keep listening.
We do.
To Coco and Dulce, the podcast. That's it for another episode. Thank you for joining us. And for another week, I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Dulce.